And happy Friday, fight fans, and welcome back to Inside the Fence as we get ready for UFC Seattle this weekend as Adesanya takes on Joe Pyfer. And we are coming at you. Last week we talked about the absolute fucking disgrace that was a decision of Mavzar versus Murphy. Quite literally one of the worst. I mean, the only fight to ever go to the cards, the worst decision I've ever seen, biggest fucking robbery ever since Jones versus fucking Reyes. And here we are. Hopefully we try to recover from that because this looks like it's going to be a really good card. Drew, over to you.
Yeah, I think we got a great card. I think this is another sleeper card where if you've been around the UFC for longer than a year or two, you're going to recognize at least one person from every single one of these fights. They might not be ranked guys, but a lot of guys are undefeated in the UFC. We got a couple guys like one really fights guys 3-1 in the UFC versus guys 4-0 in the UFC. I mean, we got in the words of Joey Diaz, we got a great fucking card here.
Speaking of cards, we've got an update to the background here. Shout out to the Rooster for giving me a Tom Aspinall card.
We can't see him,
Rob
John.
card to add. We got a Tom Aspinall card and a Marab card to add to the collection. Those are up there. We also got the Volk and Diego Lopez poster finally up because after that last fight, it's probably just going to be Volk versus Lopez 3 because I don't think either fighter, Mavzar doesn't deserve it after that, and Gene Silva is kind of a joke. So anyway, let's move on to middleweight. But first, before we get to middleweight, as per usual, if you've watched the show for a long time, you know that Maycee Barber is fighting this week, which means Drew has automatically picked her to win. So I'm not even really going to give much of an opinion on this, the co-main event. Drew, go ahead, talk about Maycee Barber for 5 minutes or whatever.
I mean, we got a one-on-one. I'm not really obsessed, but she is my favorite fighter. We have a one-on-one from Gold Label UFC. Go follow me on Instagram at DrewJ14. But yeah, I think that ever since Grasso got the belt, she kind of got a Mickey Mouse belt. She subbed Valentina. She didn't look great in their second fight. It was a draw only because it was Mexican Independence Day, and the UFC didn't want the fan brawls of Khabib and McGregor to happen again. But also, something happened to Grasso in her third fight with Valentina where she broke her ankle, and in her last fight with Natalia Silva, she does not look anywhere near the same. She almost looks like a shell of her former self. And I think the only way you beat Maycee is with speed because you're not going to hit harder than her. And when you're good enough to grapple with Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belts from fucking Brazil, and you're able to reverse position and not get submitted, you're not going to go to the ground. So with Grasso losing a lot of her speed and pop, I don't see a way in which she really competes with Maycee. I think Maycee's going to win a dominant decision, probably 30-27. And yeah, that's my 2 cents on why Maycee's going to beat Grasso.
I'm taking Grasso specifically just to piss Drew off. There's literally no statistical reasoning for that. I did no research into this fight whatsoever. I'm taking Grasso. Let's move on to the main event of
That was
UFC
a low blow, John.
Seattle.
You might as well make another comment about my freaking teeth.
Let me make another. You did not have to bring that up. Drew went to the dentist the other day, and he thinks they drilled too far into his teeth, and his mouth has hurt for like the last 3 days. I didn't say that. Literally was not going to get televised to the world. You are the one who decided to televise that.
You literally put it as the tag as my teeth don't hurt. Okay, so
people
I don't even want to hear
can't
about
see
you.
that doesn't get shown on the air.
Then why'd you make me change mine? Mine was hilarious.
Because yours was a felony. That's why we're moving on. We're moving on.
Maycee Moneyline Lock is a felony? Okay.
To the UFC Fight Night Seattle. It's a middleweight bout between the number 14 ranked Joe Pyfer and the number 4 ranked Israel Adesanya. This one, this is a very similar fight, in my opinion at least. Drew, you can add your 2 cents on this. This is a very similar fight to Holloway versus Oliveira. And what I mean by that is these are two guys who are really beloved by the fans, right? A lot of people love Izzy, and a lot of people love Joe Pyfer, not only for what he does inside of the octagon, and he's a knockout artist, right? His nickname is Body Bags, but for his story, for his journey, the road he has traveled to get to the UFC, It's really commendable. And so this is going to be a situation where you're really just, hoping at the end of the day that both fighters leave well enough to fight again. But you're really hoping for a good fight here.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to take a few minutes to talk about Joe Pyfer real quick. As Brendan Fitzgerald always says, if you don't know, now you know. Joe Pyfer was one of the only two guys that had two shots on Contender Series. He broke his arm in his first fight, and it was one of the worst breaks the doctor had ever seen.
This man
doctor
dislocated his elbow, right? He got slammed. He went to put his hand down to brace himself. His arm went one way. His elbow dislocated, so it went the other direction, and then his body spun around, right? Literally tore and broke everything you possibly can. And then in the healing I just watched this documentary, so I'm very fresh on what happened. And then during his healing process, his ligaments began to grow calcified bone. So then the doctors had to go back in, cut him open, and essentially re-break his elbow in order to fix it properly. I think he was out for like over 300 something days. I mean, he was out for over a year. Terrible injury. And the fact he even got back into fighting is a miracle in itself.
Yeah. And one thing that I will always remember is watching that second Contender Series fight is Dana White was the most bright red I have ever seen him after Contender Series, and he wouldn't even do the interview with O'Leary. And she said, "What do you have to think about this card?" And he said, "Be Joe Pyfer." And she's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Be Joe Pyfer," and walked off the stage. And that's how Joe Pyfer got in the UFC. He had the only finish that night against an undefeated guy. I can't remember what organization he was in, but he was the champ of that organization. Pyfer was
EFL.
a huge underdog. EFL. Pyfer was a huge underdog. Everybody wrote him off, and he came out there and knocked him clean out in the second round and won a contract. And I think that
first round.
Yep. Are you sure it was the first round?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. For some reason, I thought it was the second. Anyways, Joe Pyfer has a history of being kind of shaky in 5-round fights.
Or no, wait. Maybe his first actual UFC fight was a first round knockout.
I think that's correct, because I remember he got.
I think that's what it was.
I remember in the second. I believe it was the second round, but he lost a 5-round decision to Jack Hermanson. And I feel like it's just because the lights might have been a little bit too bright, and he kind of gassed out in the 4th and 5th round. But for some reason in here, as much as I want to take Joe Pyfer, this is not a who do we want to win. This is a who we think is going to win. And I will be rooting for Joe Pyfer, but I feel like you're going up against Izzy, who's hungry, who's won. I know he's 1-4 in his last 4 fights, but he is the only guy in the UFC to knock out Pereira.
How does one go 1-4 in the last 4 fights?
I meant last 5 fights. Sorry, I got confused. I had brain dyslexia.
You're totally right, and I mean that's. I told you, I texted you earlier this week. I'm like, I'm struggling with this fight because I mean this is I think this is really going to be a really good fight. These are two very, very skilled fighters. Israel Adesanya is a Hall of Famer, right? He's one of, if not the greatest kickboxer to ever grace the octagon in the Ultimate Fighting Championship.
In my opinion, I put him at 1, but I think he's a slightly better kickboxer than Pereira. Pereira's just a better fighter, and I think that's a fair assumption. That's okay.
He's the only man to. You said this yourself. He's the only man to ever knock out Pereira
in the UFC.
I talked to you earlier tonight. I said I called it a fluke knockout, right? I mean, I hate to put it that way, but that's what it was, right? Adesanya was on the back foot that entire fight and just threw a 1-2 combination that landed perfectly and clean and got him, right? Is it a fluke? Is that skill, strategy, technique, whatever you want to use, right? But in the last 5, he's just been getting beat bad, right? I think that Strickland fight broke him mentally, right? That Sean Strickland fight, first of all, going up against Sean Strickland's style, it's like losing to Sean Strickland, in my opinion, is kind of fucking embarrassing, right? He just stands straight up. The teep, he doesn't even protect himself. He puts his hands, the highest it will go is his chest. He just walks right at you, throws just light jabs, and then eventually catches you off guard and just puts you out, right? And he almost got put up by Adesanya. Go ahead.
I feel like you just literally described Floyd Mayweather in terms of the UFC. because that's all that guy did was pop his jab and keep his hands low, and he just fucked you up. And he waited for his moment. And Sean Strickland's style works not because it's just funky, it's because of how incredibly fast and unathletic or how fast he is and how unathletic he looks. He does not look like a fighter. He looks like a bodybuilder. He's stiff. He's not nimble. He doesn't move his feet. But he is so quick and his fighting IQ is off the charts. It allows him to have that style that is really hard to compete. Like, look at the guys we've thrown up against him. He took Strickland to a decision twice. Okay? Lost a split decision the first time. He absolutely dog walked Paulo Costa, okay. And then he knocked out Fluffy Hernandez, and it just Sean Strickland's style is such a hard matchup for literally any other style other than like a Hamzat or a Drakus. And even then, he's going to make you work for it. I wouldn't say that it's embarrassing to lose to Sean Strickland. I think he's just such a hard fighter to figure out because he spars so many rounds. He almost like he knows what's coming before you throw it.
No, I use the term it's embarrassing to lose. For Adesanya, at least, it's embarrassing to lose to Sean Strickland because if you look at Adesanya's body of work prior to that Strickland fight, I mean, Adesanya versus Pereira, either pick one or two, one of the most entertaining fights you'll ever see. Adesanya versus Anderson Silva, one of the most entertaining fights you'll ever see, right? Adesanya is known for those high caliber, high intensity, blow for blow matchups. And so you go up against a guy who's a little bit more methodical and a little bit slower like Strickland, completely took him out of his nature. And I think that's what Pyfer, I don't think it's not going to be, he's not Strickland level. Pyfer is a fucking animal, right? He will go after you. And man, I just don't know. I just think that Israel Adesanya, like you said, he's on a losing streak. It's pretty significant at this point. But to be fair, they're against high-level fighters. This far and away is going to be the toughest fight of Joe Pyfer's career. There is absolutely...
It's not even close.
It's not even close, right? You're talking about a former champ, greatest kickboxer ever, UFC Hall of Famer.
I'm going to be honest, greatest middleweight to ever do it.
I can't even name guys that Joe Pyfer has fought, right? So this is like real. This is a real fight for Joe Pyfer. However, I think it's in one of those situations where, and you see it all the time in the UFC, it happens almost always, unless you retire super young, air quotes young, you're going to get fighters. You're going to get fights where it's a fighter coming down off of a peak and a fighter coming up, right?
Look at the last 3 years of Anderson Silva's career after he broke his leg versus Weidman. That's what we saw.
I think that's what we have here. I think Pyfer has a really bright future ahead of him. I think he's only 30 and recently 30. And Adesanya, I think he's got to be 30. He's got to be 34 at this point.
I believe so. I believe he's over 30. But we have to believe that guy that knocked out Pereira is still somewhere in there. And if he's gonna reemerge, it better be on Saturday night.
And we say that all the time. Mm-hmm. And we say all the time, it's like, we got to believe that, this guy that did this is still in there. Yeah, that's true. But the question is you're talking about mentality. Mentally, that guy is still there. Physically, he's not, right? And I just don't know if it is. I am going to take Joe Pyfer. I'm going to root for Joe Pyfer in this fight. But, am I going to be surprised if Izzy wins? No. But this is Drew, you and I talked about this. I'm going with Pyfer. You're going with Izzy. Let's talk about the fight itself. This is a big fight for both fighters, right? This will put Izzy, this will give him a win, right? And it kind of puts him back in title contention.
Absolutely. He's third in line, yes.
And honestly, at this point, you just got to ask him, Dana's got to ask him, do you want to fight again for a championship? Which he'll probably say yes.
If Izzy gets given Hamzat, neither one of those guys can turn down this fight. I don't care if Hamzat's going to wrestle him for 25 minutes. Hamzat has to add Izzy to his resume if he wants to be in contention for the greatest middleweight period. Because at the rate this guy's career is going, I thought he was washed before he fought DDP. I think he's looking like one of the best middleweights to ever do it. And that's a hot take, is that if Hamzat stays healthy with the new cardio that his coach has put in, I have never seen that amount of output in a title fight in my life. That was incredible. He had almost 600 significant strikes in that fight. And we thought Hamzat was going to last 3 rounds and die like he did against Usman. I literally thought it was going to be the remaking a 5-rounder between him and Usman was how DDP and Hamzat was going to turn out, and I could not have been more wrong. However, I will say this. If this fight was a 3-round fight, which we're getting a little bit hypothetical here, I would be taking Joe Pyfer quicker than you could say 1-2. Okay? I think that this being a 5-round fight is going to be where the rubber meets the road, and I think it's going to separate from the good from the great. Is that I think Izzy will just walk in and do what Jack Hermanson did and just wear him down and wear him down and wear him down and beat him up, because we've seen Joe Pyfer in some of these fights where he's going into the third round and it looks a little bit shaky. I'm not gonna say he looks bad, but just a tad shaky. And I think that Izzy, I don't know when the last time Izzy had a 3-round fight was. If I'm not wrong, it was more than 7 or 8 years ago. It was way before Izzy and Gastelum. So it's been a long time since he's had a 3-round fight. You talk about a guy who's bred for 5 rounds, who's ready to lay it on line. He said, I am prepared to die, and I think that he's going to have to go in there and just take it to Pyfer. The only way Pyfer's winning is to take him down and submit him, and that's my 2 cents.
And yeah, going back to what I was saying, that's what's on the line for Izzy. You look what's on the line for Pyfer, right? He's 14th ranked in the middleweight, right? You and I talked about this. If he loses, he probably stays at 14. Right, he's fighting one of the greatest middleweights. I don't know how you can punish him.
He's the number 2 greatest best middleweight.
You can't punish him for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But his dream was I just want to be a UFC fighter, and you could be a UFC fighter and not be ranked. There's hundreds of guys who aren't ranked, right?
And he's so loved by the fans, it doesn't matter. He could lose the next 10 fights and he'll still be in the UFC.
Dude,
People love Joe Pyfer.
I see Joe Pyfer as like a Jim Miller, like a guy who's going to fight until he's like 45 years old and just like
I think that's all Pyfer's wanted. And Pyfer could shock us all and make a run at that belt. If he beats Izzy, I will sit here and go, Joe Pyfer, I'm sorry I didn't believe in you. I was rooting for you, and you won.
And that's what's on the line for him. Well, we shall see. Hopefully this one is done a lot better than it was last time. I liked the last fight. Let me say, Movzar versus Murphy, it was a really good fight. I just thought it got scored completely incorrect.
I had it a draw. I think you did as well.
We scored it 3-2 Movzar, right? That's
minus
Movzar
a point, so 47-47.
However, minus the groin kick and minus a point, it's a tie, it's a draw. So I don't know how. And then you look at the actual scorecards. They're saying Movzar won 4 rounds. I don't know what the fuck you were watching.
He did not. I watched that round 1 6 times.
By the way,
I don't see it.
I want to tell you this. I want to say this to people out there. People were saying online, oh, the commentators made it seem so biased to Murphy. I listened to it in silence. So I don't know. So you're wrong as well. I watched the fight with no sound because I was driving somewhere and I just had it on my phone. So I watched it in silence and still gave it to Murphy. So I don't know what your excuse is now.
I agree with you there. I think round 3 could have gone either way, and I thought Murphy won 1, 2, and maybe 3, and it was 48-47 Murphy. So,
well, we shall be back next week. It is Renato Moicano. Who's he fighting next week, Drew?
I don't remember.
Well, there's going to be another fight next week. Moicano's fighting, I know that. And then after that, we're going to be talking about UFC 327. Yuri and Joshua Van. Yuri's going to get his belt back. Joshua Van's going to defend his belt against...
Joshua Van is not winning that fight. I'm sorry.
We're going to have to wait and see. But until then, thank you very so much for joining us. Drew, plug what you wanted to plug.
Follow the Instagram, DrewJ14, please. There's content, cards, all sorts of nonsense.
Okay, that's not what he said he was going to plug. He did not say... He told me at the start of the show, he told me before we record, he goes, we got to plug our Threads account. And I go, okay, plug
our
it.
Threads
and then
account.
He plugged something He plugged something that wasn't what he said.
Follow Inside the Fence on Threads. Okay, we've had the UFC liker content. We've had West Till Death. We've interacted with that guy. We need to get on the broadcast. So please,
also
shout
out West Till Death. They tried to take him down. He's still living.
If you're hearing this, West Till Death, we'd love to have you on the show.
West Till Death, we would love to have you. We love your work. Also, why are you posting Kevin Durant in a Seattle Supersonics jersey on your page? Makes no fucking sense. We'd
rather have you here. We love you. We love your content. We would love to work with you. Please get in touch with us.
And we love you, and thank you for watching, and we'll see you all next week. Bye.